US President Donald Trump has exempted himself, his entire family, and all his close associates from any tax claims. In simple terms, if the Trump family ever had any tax violations, no one will ever find out about it again. The United States Department of Justice has prohibited the IRS from auditing all tax returns of US President Donald Trump, his family members, affiliated individuals, and businesses for all previous years. The decision was made as part of the settlement of Donald Trump's lawsuit against the IRS over the leak of his tax returns. As part of the lawsuit, Trump demanded $10 billion from the tax service, and this is being called the biggest scam of the century. After all, Donald Trump was suing his own department and his own tax agency, whose heads report directly to him. And this means that he was actually in charge of these leaders. This can be called a conflict of interest, but the scheme is much deeper and much more sophisticated. My name is Alexei Pecci. Let's discuss this topic together. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, like this video, leave any comment, and friends, subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pecci News. The link to it is in the description of this video. Also, in the video description, there's a link to my exclusively Ukrainian language YouTube channel. So if you want to watch my separate videos in Ukrainian, be sure to go there, subscribe, and support the brand new, exclusively Ukrainian language YouTube channel. So there is a legal concept called a conflict of interest. This is when a person makes a decision on behalf of the state and at the same time is the main beneficiary of that same decision. In a normal country, this is actually prohibited. But Donald Trump doesn't care about that, and the decision was made. So what's the point here? The President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, through the Department of Justice under his control and through the acting Attorney General he appointed, Todd Blanche, managed to ensure that the IRS is now, quote, forever deprived of the right to audit his tax returns. And not only his, but also the returns. And all of his family, his sons, their wives, their companies, and so on. No one will ever see now what was in the tax returns of Donald Trump's entire family. Moreover, the US tax agency now doesn't even have the right to audit them. The decision of the US Department of Justice dated May 19th states the following quote: "The United States, that is, as a state, is forever deprived of the right to prosecute or consider any claims against Donald Trump or members of his family, and affiliated individuals and companies. Everything that was or could have been subject to investigation is closed forever." To grasp the scale of what happened, we must start at the beginning. The story is actually longer than it seems, and Trump is quite the sly one. So, in 2020, the New York Times newspaper published Donald Trump's tax returns covering several years. A shocking revelation emerged. In 2016 and in 2017, Donald Trump paid only $750 each year in federal income tax. $750 for the whole year. In 10 out of the previous 15 years, Donald Trump didn't pay a single cent in taxes. At the same time, Trump officially called himself a very successful and wealthy businessman. But he didn't pay taxes. In 2021, ProPublica published data about the tax schemes of the richest Americans, including Donald Trump. In 2022, the Democrat-controlled Congressional Finance Committee released another 6 years of his tax returns. But where did all this data come from? It was leaked by an IRS contractor named Charles Littlejohn. According to prosecutors, back in 2017, he allegedly took a job at the IRS specifically to gain access to income information, to Donald Trump's tax returns. And it was this guy who gave the information about Donald Trump to the New York Times and ProPublica. In October 2023, he pleaded guilty to 1 count, and in January 2024, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Donald Trump, of course, was furious. He publicly stated that the IRS checks him every year, saying how many times can they check me and so on, and he swore to take revenge. To take revenge on the system that, in his opinion, was actually used against him politically, the system that showed he actually hadn't paid taxes for many years. Returning to the White House in 2025, Trump files a lawsuit against the IRS and the United States Department of the Treasury for $10 billion. And this is where the main legal absurdity begins. Listen carefully. Donald Trump files a lawsuit for $10 billion against the U.S. Internal Revenue Service. The U.S. Internal Revenue Service is a federal agency. A federal agency is subordinate to the Department of the Treasury. The Department of the Treasury reports directly to the President. That is, Donald Trump, as a private citizen, is suing the agency that he manages as president. And it turns out that Donald Trump is both the plaintiff and the defendant at the same time. And this completely baffled American judges. They say, we see that this is a conflict of interest. We see that, in fact, Trump is suing himself, but what to do about it is unclear. And lawyers called this, quote, an extraordinary use of executive power. Basically, it's an abuse of authority, just phrased more elegantly. But it gets worse. May 18, 2026, Trump announces that he's ready to withdraw his $10 billion lawsuit if he's paid a little less. And they guarantee that no one will audit his tax returns. Not only will no one see them, but no one will even audit them. What do you think? What decision does the department he himself runs make? As a result, Donald Trump withdraws the lawsuit and the Department of the Treasury creates a fund of almost $2 billion. The fund is called the Fund Against the Use of the State as a Weapon. Officially, it's for compensating people who allegedly suffered illegal persecution under Joe Biden. Unofficially, as you can imagine, this money will be controlled by Donald Trump himself. But that was just the beginning. On May 19th, the next day, another document quietly appears on the website of the U.S. Department of Justice. A separate addendum to the agreement that was previously formalized. And this decision was quietly inserted into an already published document. This addendum is just one page, which states that the IRS is now prohibited from auditing the tax returns of Donald Trump and his family. And not just Donald Trump and his family, but also affiliated individuals and businesses. Do you know what that means? It means that from now on, everyone in Donald Trump's circle is protected from tax audits. Remember that story when Donald Trump comes out, makes some statement, and suddenly the stock market prices start jumping up and down, and at that moment someone goes and buys in, and they make millions of dollars. So, if these companies were affiliated with Donald Trump, their tax returns can't be touched now, and they can't be audited. This applies to, quote, tax returns filed before the agreement comes into effect, that is, before May 18, 2026. The document was signed by Todd Blanche. You might think he's the Attorney General and everything is legal, but here's the detail. It was Todd Blanche who was Donald Trump's personal lawyer in several criminal cases, including the New York trial about Donald Trump's tax fraud. Now the same Blanche, already acting as the U.S. Attorney General, is signing a document that forever closes all tax claims against his former client Donald Trump. How do you like that twist? So what's the result? Well, let me try to put it as simply as possible. In the US, there is a principle that no one is above the law. This phrase is written right on the Supreme Court building, and it's been the foundation of the American legal system since 1787. But Donald Trump, through the department under his control and through his former personal lawyer, signed a document that says tax laws no longer apply to him, his children, his companies, and so on. At the same time, ordinary Americans are funding almost $2 billion for a fund that will pay supporters of Donald Trump. That's the kind of scam that was pulled off by the American president. I'll leave it at that. Your opinion, your conclusions, write in the comments on this video, subscribe to the channel, click the bell, and don't forget to like. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so financially with any donation using the links and details in the description of this video or by scanning the QR code on your screen. Remember to subscribe to my Ukrainian language YouTube channel. The link is in the video description. That's all for now. Take care. Goodbye.